Rain streamed down the glass in patterns that reminded me of neural networks branching out in impossible directions. I stood there, outside the small gallery in Lapa, clutching my folder so hard the corners frayed beneath my thumb. Water seeping into the files didn't matter now. They'd already dismissed me. My uncle's painting hung next to the door, a violent blur of color, the kind that drew oohs and ahs from the same kind of guests every year. People from our church, neighbors, a few bored journalists, and here I was, soaked, 25, with papers heavy, not from rain, but rejection. Inside, the crowd thinned near the buffet, women slipping their arms through each other's, men laughing at jokes about the Flamengo game. My mother's voice rose of the din. Ela quer mudar o mundo com brinquedinho de computador, she said, meaning she wants to change the world with her little computer toys. And the peal of laughter that followed kicked up in me the familiar mixture shame and anger. I pressed my forehead against the window for a second. The cold bit deep. My folder bulged with diagrams, research summaries, wild graphs my cousin called squiggle art. On each page, an idea I'd nursed since college, built with sleepless nights and ramen noodle mornings. Algorithms for early disease detection, using cheap sensors and AI trained in Portuguese, made for someone like my tia who never once used a credit card, let alone a hospital app. The gallery owner's words still rang in my ears, kind but cold. This is science, dear, not art. It doesn't belong here. I turned from the window. My cousin Yuri spotted me from inside, and in that moment, she looked in my direction, her lips tight. I walked away, the rain hammering my shoulders, emptying everything inside me into the puddles at my feet. I wanted to scream, but all that came out was a wet gasp, lost to the traffic and laughter behind me. After the rejection, the world shrank to my childhood bedroom, a box in Santa Teresa above the raucous city. Walls full of faded carnival balloons, now hooks for dreams gone limp. Each day, I ran simulations on a cheap laptop. The one I'd traded for my guitar when I was 19. Tia Raquel passed by the door, a plate of feijão in her hands. She'd never ask how my little experiments went, but sometimes left food nearby, a silent truce. Word spread quickly in our family. My grandmother held court at Sunday feasts, surrounded by the scent of roast chicken, and any mention of my project led to whispered prayers. She studied so many years, and for what? Can't she get a good job like her cousin at Petrobras? My father lamented, turning the television volume up each time I tried to counter. Even the kids took part, mocking the way I doodled on napkins during lunch, pretending to be a scientist. Everyone had a story, a neighbor's kid who spent years in school and came back with nothing, another who tried something crazy and failed. But there was a current inside me, a kind of quiet defiance twisting beneath my fear. Each rejection from a grant committee, every no from startup accelerators made the world feel smaller and the rooms darker. But at 3 a.m, listening to the distant samba beats drifting through the window, I wrote code. I annotated data collected from cheap sensors, begged doctors online for anonymized records, and in odd moments reminded myself it could matter to someone out there. One December night, months after the gallery fiasco, I read a study from rural Bahia about missed breast cancer diagnoses. The numbers struck something inside me, a whole field of women lost to cost, language, and logistics. The pictures of their hands, their eyes on a government website made it real. That was when I stopped caring about everyone watching from the periphery. I quit sending applications to cool incubators and took the bus downtown to the university, where an old friend, Julia, ran a cramped computational lab. "I can give you storage and a desk if you clean up the junk first," she said, only half joking. So I did. Each day I dragged in brushed off discarded computers, and pieced a cluster together out of the trash. I called it Frankenstein, and to my surprise, it ran my code faster than ever. 2 years blurred into one long rainy season. My mother stopped asking about my project. Neighbors started their own rumors. Someone said I was selling drugs, another that I was running from a failed relationship. None were true, but it suited everyone that way. I saw myself on those afternoons, a shadow next to rude graffiti washed onto the walls by every downpour, clinging to hope the way the paint clung to brick. But then Frankenstein spit out a result. A model with an accuracy rate better than the red tape software the Ministry of Health used. My email pinged with a message from a hospital in Fortaleza that I'd cold called. One nurse, eager and overburdened, ran data through my app and in a week flagged 2 patients whose disease had been missed. I don't know who you are, Mosa, she wrote, but you made me cry in a good way. I stared at the words. My hands trembled. Was it fluke? I ran more tests, reached out to others, clinics in Accra, a diabetes project in Minas Gerais, a professor in Porto Alegre who invited me to Zoom meetings at odd hours. Their faces appeared in small rectangles, tired but alive, willing to try, willing to believe. Some became friends, some colleagues, but it was all piecemeal. Funding remained a fantasy. My visa applications for US and Germany were rejected. The government ignored my emails. But now, when I face my mother at the table, her shouts had faded to exhausted sighs. I found courage to ask for quiet during calls. At family parties, when laughter returned to my crazy science, I no longer felt it cut to the bone. They wanted certainty. Life had given them so little of it. Then, suddenly, it happened. The night I least expected. After a software update, I saw the results synthesized. Thousands of rural test cases submitted by clinics, flagged with anomalies, several potential lives saved, all with data no other model caught. I packaged everything, write-ups, numbers, testimonials, into a grant proposal and shot it off to a foundation in Sao Paulo. I slept 3 hours that week, refreshing my inbox every hour until an email arrived at 7 on a Thursday morning. It read, "Congratulations, you've been selected." The next months spun like samba drums. I met with foundation heads, journalists, the actual Minister of Health, who tapped a pen on my graphs and finally listened. A major university put their stamp on my name. Suddenly, investment appeared, real money, enough to rent a proper workspace, pay for servers, buy coffee instead of scavenging stale cafeteria crumbs. My mother still didn't quite get why my phone kept ringing or how her picture appeared in newspapers, blurred, but unmistakable, next to the story of the local girl using AI to transform healthcare. She looked at the photo, frowning, said, "Why does my chin look so big here?" I couldn't help but laugh. Calls from hospital directors started coming in. I'd talk late into the night with doctors, programmers, health administrators. Each spoke through the history of their own exhaustion. What they shared was disbelief that someone from their own country, their own city, could do what Americans and Germans usually did. Each obrigada, doutora, felt raw and new, like unwrapping my hope each morning, but family remained unconvinced, except for Julia, who celebrated each threshold met and once texted me at 3 a.m. "They'll never get it, but I do. Keep going." I clung to that. 4 years passed from that first waterlogged night. Invitations came to speak at tech conferences in Lisbon, then London. I flew in suits bought second-hand, nodding to crowds of strangers who sounded nothing like my mother or my uncle or cousin Yuri. No matter the applause, part of me always hovered back at the gallery door, the rain on my skin. But the real moment came on a foggy July afternoon. I was back in Rio for the unveiling of a new community health center financed in part by donations from my project's success. The mayor would be there. So would health officials, local clergy, and, at my insistent request, my family and most of our neighborhood. I wanted them all to see, firsthand, what those computer toys could mean. My mother fussed over her hair the whole morning. "Why do they want me there?" she grumbled. Yet she pressed my best dress shirt. When we arrived, the center was alive with banners, children running, samba musicians tuning up. On a temporary stage, my cousins shifted from foot to foot. I saw my uncle, his painting years ago, still sitting dusty above our old couch. Yuri waved, uncertain. I stepped up in front of the crowd, hands trembling fast as my heart. Murmurs rose up in the crowd. Old classmates, former teachers. The local priest, who'd muttered, "Science is not faith," now nodded at me solemnly. The director of health announced with protocol-heavy formality why we'd gathered. This center would use proprietary technology developed here, and he gestured toward a tall blue and white screen. Behind that screen stood something real, 6 battered tablets, running software built by my own hand, showing diagnostic reports in simple language, Portuguese voice, bright colors, easy icons for those who couldn't read or see. Seated nearby was Dona Lucia, a matriarch who'd lost 2 sisters to undetected diabetes. She volunteered her checkup for the demonstration, her gnarled fingers steady as the nurse scanned her readings. I guided them through the process, voice shaking but steady. "See? The app tells the nurse which cases need a second look," I explained.